Welcome to Know Your Mobile. I'm Basil. This is a Sony Xperia Z video review. The Sony Xperia Z is the latest flagship from Sony, and not only does it pack weatherproofing, it also packs a full HD 1080p display at 5 inches. That gives it a stonking PPI and an altogether immersive user experience. Starting with the design, and the Xperia Z is just 9mm thin. Being weather resistant, all the ports are indeed under flaps, and this is a little bit irksome. However, it's not the worst thing in the world because it does have that weatherproofing, and we'd much rather a flappy phone than a broken phone. So carrying on with the design, as we said, 5-inch display takes center stage. You've got on-screen buttons, so no capacitive buttons to detract from the beautifulness of the fascia. Sony insignia up top, front-facing camera and sensors. Left-hand side micro SD card slot, right-hand side you have a micro USB port and a micro SIM card slot, along with a beautiful power button and a volume rocker. The reason the power button is so beautiful is the positioning is just perfect, whatever hand you're holding it in, for your thumb or finger to press. Down below, no buttons or ports whatsoever. Up top is the 3.5mm headphone jack again, underneath the flap. On the reverse, 13MP exmor RS sensor. That's camera and flash. Back to the screen, and this is what is really a highlight of the device. As we said, 1080p, incredibly sharp. We'll bring it up close and you can hopefully see just how sharp it is. Project Butter from Jelly Bean 4.1 on board makes everything just really smooth. Text looks absolutely gorgeous. If we actually multitask out, jump into our Amazon Kindle application, we can see we're reading text on here with serifs. We don't normally read text with serifs on screens, but we can because it's just so gorgeous and sharp. So yeah, the great thing about the screen is how sharp it is. Colors are also incredibly nice and vibrant. Sony have jammed on a bunch of images that show this off to great effect. If we actually swipe through them, we can see just how beautiful the colors actually appear. Bravia Engine 2 makes everything lovely, lovely head-on. Anyone concerned about viewing angles though, it isn't going to be the best out there. Blues have a habit of looking a little bit hyper when they are viewed at extreme angles. However, most people don't get a phone for crazy viewing angles. Most people get it for head-on, and indeed we probably haven't experienced anything better than the Sony Xperia Z thus far. So now the screen is fantastic. How's the UI? Well, with Android 4.1 you're off to a good start. You've got a whole load of applications at your disposal. You've also got a new UI interface, user interface even. If we pinch out, we can see Sony have a variable number of home screens now. Hurrah! They also have this list at the bottom which allows you to edit your widgets, applications, wallpaper and themes. If you edit your themes, it really does change the entire look and feel of the whole phone, and it is gorgeous the extent to which it does so. It even goes and tweaks out your wallpaper from your lock screen. So if you can see, all that is just really nice and cohesive with our purple theme. Purple highlights to go with our purple phone. Overkill? We think so too. So we can very, very easily just swap it to something a little bit more subdued. There you go. Done. So now the Sony Xperia Z UI is fantastic to look at from the get-go, but what are the highlights? Starting off with widgets, we've got the widgets that we know and love from Sony Xperias in the past. These are really, really handy. Yeah, sure they are, but you can also toggle quick settings from up top here, as you can see. Volume, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi and mobile connection, jumping into your full settings very, very easily. Your applications drawer in standard Sony style can be viewed alphabetically by most used, recently installed, or indeed in your own order, which is really nice and easy. Folders are applicable in your home screen, however not in your applications drawer, so laying an icon on top of one another won't do anything. As far as other elements of the user interface goes, gaming is pretty great. 3D games look fantastic, 2D games play very well. One thing to bear in mind, the device can get a little bit warm around the camera mount area, so that is something you might want to note. Sony include a whole bunch of their applications on here as well. As far as their media applications go, Movies and Music Unlimited is where you can get your own content, but they also have Social Life, which is their aggregator of your Facebook, Google Now, etc. You've also got Google's applications such as Google Play Music, Google Play Movies, Google Magazines and Google Books. So there are many, many ways of getting your content onto this device and taking advantage of that gorgeous, gorgeous display. powering everything along, as we said, is that quad-core 1.5 GHz Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, and it certainly does a good job. Every now and then there is ever so slight stutter, as you can see in frame rates, but these are mainly within the widgets. Games tended to play back very smoothly. Bear in mind, not all games are optimized for 1080p just yet, but that should change. Chaos rings, get optimized, fast. Moving on to the back, you've got that 13 megapixel Exmor RS sensor, and performance might sound fantastic, 13 megapixels, hurrah! But unfortunately, the noise issue is a real problem every now and then. Sony process images very heavily, very heavily, and this compensates for the noise quite substantially. In fact, their superior auto mode takes stonking pictures. We can take a quick picture of this, for example. This will... Oh, that probably wasn't as good as a picture as a camera can take. Let's try that once more. There you go. And so we just took this very quick macro picture right here. Oh, there you go. As you can see, very decent, very sharp, but it's actually really heavily processed, and it's only when you get right in that you can see just how heavily Sony process and denoise their pictures. This shouldn't matter to most people. Most of you out there will actually really like the results you get from the Sony Xperia Z camera. It looks beautiful and printed out, and if you're not zooming in or cropping in all that much, you'll be absolutely fine. However, any image files who just really want the highest quality image out there in low light and the most pure results without too much processing might not actually take to this. The modes, though, really do make up for any shortcomings in terms of raw image quality. The superior auto mode makes all the decisions for you, and we've spoken about it briefly, and it really is fantastic. Normal mode lets you get a little bit more creative. Video camera lets you take videos, and a real highlight is HDR video, which we can take a quick peek at now. As you can see, how much more detail does that pull out of the table? Loads. Okay, you've also got burst mode, 10 frames per second, but be aware, burst mode produces insanely noisy shots because they're not processed at all. Picture effects is also a really great mode. Taking a look, we can see you've got a preview of all the picture effects. If we jump into Sketch, for example, we can see a full screen preview. How cool is that? You can do it in Photoshop, but you can't really do it on many phones, so that's why it's just so neat. If we jump out of that, we can see sweep panoramas, scene selection modes on there, as well as front-facing camera and front-facing video. So as we said, the pictures that actually come out of the Sony Xperia Z, if you're a standard consumer not really into your imaging, will be absolutely perfect. But they really are complemented incredibly well by the Xperia Z shooting modes. As far as other elements of the phone go, as we said, you've got a micro SD card slot on here, but you can expand this up to 64 gigabytes, but it has 16 gigabytes of internal storage. The 2100 milliamp battery on here does fall short, unfortunately, of our expectations. It'll last realistically with a screen used quite a lot, about half to three quarters of a day. There is something really cool called power stamina mode on. And if we activate power stamina mode, we can see apparently it changes the amount we could use our phone to 3 days from just 5 hours. Stamina mode deactivates applications when the phone is on standby, and you can add applications to whitelist to enable when the phone is indeed being switched off. So for example, if you want WhatsApp notifications to come through, you can just whitelist WhatsApp. A way Sony do remedy this short battery life, though, is with a dock. This ships with the phone, hurrah! And indeed it's very nice. We love it. We think all phones should ship with docks. This meant that the dock in our office would be there as we got into the office. We'd plonk it on the dock, it would charge, and happiness would ensue, because when we took it off it would be at 100% battery, and that is plenty to get us home. So in part that does compensate for the poor battery life, however not totally. So anyone who really needs a phone that can last hours and hours and hours might not love the Sony Xperia Z quite as much as we did. So that's been our review of the Sony Xperia Z. Highlights: gorgeous screen, great design, beautiful user interface, redrawn for the screen very nicely. It's all very good. Downside: battery life. Meh. Camera is great in certain conditions. As soon as you turn down the lights, though, low light performance just gets very heavily processed. Otherwise, though, this definitely gets a thumbs up from us. We really love the Xperia Z and hope you liked this review. If you have any questions, please file them in the comments section below. If you enjoy the review, subscribe to the channel. Sorry it took so long, but it's just such a good phone. There is a hell of a lot to talk about. Thanks for watching Know Your Mobile.